evening and welcome to the Balie, everyone. My name is Iante Mosselman and I will moderate this evening for you. And tonight we will speak with Laurent Binet and Joost de Vries about reality, imagination, history, freedom of the arts, and the way in which art and free expression are under pressure. And I will start by talking with Laurent Binet, and Joost will join us a little bit later. Actors Bo Tarenskeen and Jolanda van den Berg will read two fragments from Laurent Binet's book Perspectives. And a big thank you to Institut Français NL for making this evening possible. I have two small things that are important for you to keep in mind. The first being that there is room for questions at the end of our conversation. The second, that there is a live stream. So if you don't want your question to be circulating on the YouTube channel of the Balie for eternity, then it's best to ask your question at the bar. So if you want to ask something really inappropriate, that is the right thing to do. I'm going to introduce Laurent Binet to you. He studied at the University of Paris 3 Sorbonne Nouvelle, obtained the agrégation in modern literature and thought in Seine-Saint-Denis and abroad. And in 2010, he published his debut novel HHhH, for which he received the Prix Goncourt for Best First Novel. This was followed by Rien, passe, comme, prévu, the seventh function of language, which won the Prix du Roman Fnac and the Prix Interallié, and then followed by Civilizations, which received the Grand Prix du Roman de l'Académie française. This is his, and then tonight we'll mainly speak about his latest novel that appeared in 2023, Perspectives. It's a beautiful read, so if you haven't read it yet, you must. That was my introduction. I tried to do as best as I can in my Dutch French. Welcome, Laurent. Please give him a warm applause.
Merci.
So maybe to start with this novel and how it came into existence, it's a novel of letters, a detective story. Can you tell me how you started working on this novel?
Well, my previous novel before this one was Civilizations, and it was located, it was already a Renaissance novel, you know. I mean, it was what we call New Chronia. I imagined that Incas from America invaded Europe, you know. So it was a counter history. And so writing that novel, I discovered the world of Renaissance, and I was so fascinated, so amazed by that world that for the first time I didn't want to move from one time to another. You know, my first novel, HHhH, was a Second World War history. Then the second one, the seventh function of language, was settled during in 1980. And then for the first time, I didn't want to give up with the period, and so I wanted to dig further into the Renaissance. And once I decided to dig the Renaissance time, I wanted it to be at the very core of Renaissance, which is Florence. You know, Florence. The hardcore of Renaissance was Florence, and I wanted to return to a genre. I tried a bit with the seventh function of language, which was the detective novel. You know, I mean so I wanted to make a whodunit at the Renaissance time in Florence. And for some reason, I had the idea that it could be interesting to make it. I mean, the most important decision I made for that book, which makes the book very specific, was to use to make it epistolary. You know, like to write the story only by letters, because I thought that. Yeah, at first I was appealed by the fact that I didn't know many detective novels made with letters, you know, so it's always attractive, like to think yeah, maybe it wasn't done before. In fact, it was done because everything was done. But second, which was more interesting, more valuable reason, was that I think crossing letters with detective novel was interesting for one reason, because it put the reader, it puts you in the place of the detective, you know, like the letters, like, you know, what is interesting in what's the most exciting in a detective novel, you know, the most exciting is when the narrator is the guilty one, you know. But of course you can't do it many times, you know. Agatha Christie did it once, and in fact twice, but once you've done it, you can do it again and again. But with letters, what was interesting is in that book you have like 12, 15 narrators, like the guys writing letters, who can be guilty, you know. So it makes the reader in the proper, I think, the proper state of mind required by reading a detective novel, which is paranoia. You know, it makes you paranoid because you know that everything you read, you can't trust, because as in the real life, I would say, everybody lies.
And this paranoia is a good thing, you think, to have as a reader? I mean, yeah, why?
Of course, I mean it's a part of the game. I mean, it's a part of the game. Like when you read a detective novel, it's a game. You know, like I give you cards. You have you've got that hand in your hand, and you try to find your way in the maze, you know, in the labyrinth of the propositions I give you, you know, in order to, I mean, I ask you a question and you try to answer, and of course, I mean, because it's not exactly a fair game, I'm cheating, you know, so I try to manipulate you enough, like you'll follow the wrong lead, and and at the end, I mean, the game is a success if at the end you are surprised, and you would say, yeah, I should have think about it, you know.
And is that then something, because it's of course very enjoyable, everybody likes to play a game, but do you also think, like, apart from that it's fun, and that is it also important to play? Is it good for us as a reader, you think?
Well, I mean, to play is to. I mean, this is the base. This is the base of life. You know. I mean, I mean, what is the best way to learn? It's to play. You know. I mean, the children. I mean, the baby lion. He's learning how to chase, how to hunt by playing with his brothers, with his parents. You know. I mean, yeah. In a way, I mean, game is everything of human life, you know. Like, it's the best way to learn is to play, and I don't know. I mean, this is the
core.
Yeah, the best way to live, I think. You know, like to play, and of course, I mean, as every game, I mean, to enjoy a game, you have to take it seriously. Of course, it is a serious thing to play.
You can't do it just for that. No, but maybe what did you then want us to learn? If playing is about learning something, do you want us to learn how to think? Do you want us to learn how to doubt, or is it not so direct?
So, tell me again.
Do you want, when we play with a book, and when we think of who done it, and is there then something you want us also to learn while reading, or is that too direct?
No, yeah, it's not that simple. Like, if I want to teach you something, I used to be a teacher. If I want to teach you something, you know, I tell you what I want to teach you. You know, this is you need to be. At least two people to play, you know. So it means, you know, I mean, this is a game between the writer and the reader, and it is not a fair game. I mean, the writer has more cards in his hands, but but not everything. I mean, like it's not like I want to teach you something. You know, I don't know what I want to teach you. You know, just I have an idea and I want to develop it, and I will give you. You know, I will share it with you. But it's not clear what I want to. No. It's not, a game is not like. This is the best way to learn, but it's not like in a classroom, like as a teacher, I want to teach you something, you know, like, so it means, I don't know exactly where we are going, you know, this is a part of the fun being a writer, you know, like I have a vision, I have an idea, like, okay, like Renaissance, history novel, who done it, letters, but I don't believe, je crois pas à, I don't believe to what we call in France les romans à thèse, you know, like novels to prove something. I think fiction can't prove anything, you know. So I just want to give you a vision, which is my vision of Renaissance, and to share you that game, which is like a cards game, you know. And at the end, your vision will be slightly or completely different than mine, you know, but we'll have, on aura partagé, we'll have shared something, and hopefully that's interesting for you and me.
We're going to listen to a letter of the novel, but first I want to ask you one more thing, because when you start writing, do you know from the beginning of writing this book who did it, or did you doubt?
So that's a very good question, and the answer is very clear. Don't write a detective novel if you don't know the end, if you don't know who is guilty, because then, it will be really a mess. No, that's a very good question, and for once, the answer is very, very, very clear. You know, like it happened to me, like in the previous book, a good detective novel is full of the piste leads, you know, false, fake leads, or, you know, clues. As a writer, I give you some clues, you know, but I have to know if it's a fake clue or a right one, you know. So for that, I have to know where I go, because at some point I will drive you to a dead end, but I have to know it's a dead end. You know, I have to, you know, if I want to manipulate you in the proper way, I have to know. You know, it can't be random. If it's random, I think, well, it will be a disaster.
We're going to listen to a first letter, and it's in the beginning of the book, and maybe as a short introduction. It is a letter of Caterina de' Medici, the Queen of France, and she writes it to Piero Strozzi, Maarschalk. Oh, how would you say it? He's the
Maréchal. I don't know in English.
We keep it in French. I think the translation will be on it.
It's like above a general.
Yeah. And it's about she wants to rule Florence, of course, but it's not hers. It's of Duke Cosimo I. And there appears to be a painting, and that painting is an image of the daughter of Cosimo, and she is painted as Venus. It's a painting of a Venus naked, but with her head. And I think this is the information you need to understand this letter. Jolanda will read in Dutch, but we also have the translation here.
Parijs, 10 januari 1557. Uw dapperheid, beste neef, werd gisteren nog geroemd door de koning van Frankrijk. Die weet dat u een van zijn vurigste dienaars bent. En heel het Louvre galmt van uw heldendaden. Maar weet u, meneer de Maarschalk, dat er andere middelen dan het zwaard zijn om over zijn vijanden te zegevieren? U en ik willen Florence, dat van ons is, of het zou moeten zijn. En Cosimo il Popolano, die nog geen derde van uw onverzaagdheid en nog geen kwart van mijn aanspraken heeft, verspert ons al veel te lang de weg. Zolang die kleine, onbeduidende de Medici onder bescherming van Spanje staat, zal het moeilijk zijn, als ik uw verdiensten niet kende, zou ik zeggen onmogelijk, de stad met een militaire actie in te nemen. Maar u kent de Florentijnen. Er is maar een futiliteit nodig en ze schreeuwen al om de republiek. Die futiliteit zal zeker niet van uw verbannen vrienden in Rome of Venetië komen. U en ik herinneren ons nog hun onvoorstelbare passiviteit toen Lorenzino Alessandro doodde. En dat werkelijk verlammende onvermogen van ze om de gelegenheid te baat te nemen als die zich voordoet, laat er bij mij geen twijfel over bestaan. Van die mensen valt niets te verwachten. Laat ze maar blijven samenscholen om te complotteren zoveel als ze willen. Een dergelijke gelegenheid doet zich nooit meer voor. Maar ik weet dat u van een ander kaliber bent. Bij u is er niet veel voor nodig om het juiste moment aan te grijpen en Cosimo terug te sturen naar het niets waaruit hij nooit tevoorschijn had mogen komen. Nu heb ik bij toeval een middel ontdekt om zijn gezag blijvend te ondermijnen. Het zekerste en meest funeste middel, de spot. Tarantino zien, terecht bijgenaamd, de gezel der vorsten, en laat hem de schotschriften schrijven waarvan hij het geheim kent. De vrede tussen Frankrijk en Spanje zal niet eeuwig blijven duren. Als Philips eenmaal op een ander strijdtoneel opereert, dan zullen we eens zien wat een verzwakte Cosimo waard is. Ik zeg niet dat het een gemakkelijke onderneming is. Het schilderij wordt door Cosimo zelf bewaard in zijn eigen garderobe. Hier hangt alles af van de juiste man. Hij moet binnen kunnen komen, vermetel zijn en nagenoeg geen scrupules kennen. Ik zelf ben al veel te lang geleden uit Florence vertrokken. Kent u stom toevallig zo'n man?
Dank je wel. So one of the things that I really loved in this novel is at the heart of a power struggle is a painting. Not a weapon, not artillery, not the military. And that's an interesting way, I think, to look at art. And I was wondering, do you think in this day and age, can art still be dangerous?
I don't know.
No?
No, I don't know. Hopefully, yes. I don't know. I mean, what I think about that extract we just heard is this was all about communication, you know. And I was thinking like they didn't have the social networks, but it was in a way they had, you know. And painting was a part of that. Soft power, you know, and that Arantino, you know, he was like, on dirait un influenceur, you know.
An influencer, yes.
You know. So things didn't change that much. And yes, of course, I mean, some piece of art can change the world, but I don't know how, I don't know. I mean, it's always like, I don't think there is that I heard that question many times, you know, and the answer is not obvious. I think yes, the answer is yes, but don't expect like it is like a spark, you know, like that suddenly there will be some book, some movie, which it's always like a slow work, you know. I mean, the French Revolution, it happened because during a century, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, Diderot, they wrote books, you know, but it didn't. And suddenly, after a long maturation, or I don't know, you know, like just it took years and years, and suddenly that was an explosion, which happened le 14 juillet, the 14th of July, 1789. You know, so you never know. I mean, the answer is yes, but I don't know how. You know, I don't know how, and I think Voltaire, Diderot. I mean, they didn't expect the revolution, you know, but it happened, you know. So the answer is yes, but nobody knows, even the artist, you know.
Don't know.
Like, so it's just like an underground struggle among the society, which the fighters, they are even not aware of, you know, about the why they are struggling. I mean, we believe we are struggling for something, but what will work, what will decide some change, nobody knows, I think.
But you call them the fighters. Do you see yourself also in a way as a fighter in that sense, or not?
I feel myself as a fighter like every citizen, you know. I mean, I've got political ideas, but as a novelist, I don't feel as a fighter. Like, I just want to share some vision. So of course it is politics, because everything is politics, you know. But it's things we're working before to make Trump real and happening, you know. And so, I mean, for the best or the worst, le meilleur or the better or the worst, I mean, this is how it works, you know. Like, so, I mean, I wrote a book about Renaissance. I don't know what role that novel can have. Maybe it will have some, maybe it will have nothing. But I know this is a part of something, you know. And so I think all those things, it's just, we have political consciousness, but we have also something which is subconscious, you know. And I think at the end, this is maybe the most important part, you know. Like, yeah, and at some time the subconscious become, you know, it's it's under, and suddenly it becomes over or au-dessus, quoi.
And do you think that this then happened with this novel? Because it feels so. It is about something that happened in the 16th century, but it feels very present. And maybe to also give another example, what I thought when reading about this and about art is that I found very interesting the fear that Cosimo and his wife have of this painting. And there is, I think, something they fear in something that an image can do, a work of art can do, even though it's a fiction. And you see, I think, with Trump taking over, for instance, the Kennedy Center, or with Putin, who is very also focused on culture and on fiction writers. So, for instance, one of the Andrei Kurkov, who I interviewed here, was one of the writers from which he said, like, he's one of the top of my list of the people that I wanted to have arrested after the full-scale invasion. So I think people in power do fear something still from the art, the way you also describe. Do you agree with that?
Tell me again, because I'm not sure I got everything. I'm sorry.
I think that maybe autocrats.
I got Andrei Kurkov, because the writer of Le Pingouin, the Penguin, right?
Yeah.
So I got this part.
Putin is afraid of him. Let me say it like that. Yeah. And then Trump, also the Kennedy Center, which is a big art center in Washington or New York. Now I'm lost. Okay, Washington. Thank you. He replaced the director of it, for instance, and he sort of shut it down. So I think there is autocrats, dictators. Well, Trump is not a dictator because he was chosen, but powerful people tend to be still afraid of art, I think. Well, but why do you, if you agree?
Yeah, I know too much about it because, I mean, my publisher was Grasset, you know, so you may have heard about it in France, that I mean, it's not an autocrat, but that tycoon or that magnate, I don't know how to call it, you know, he bought the publishing house, and I mean, he wants to reshape culture, you know, like, of course, I mean, anyone concerned about power wants to I mean, takes care about culture, you know, yeah, of course.
Why?
But, well, because, I mean, I told you, like, the culture doesn't fight with guns and weapons, but this is an underground fight, you know, like, this is what I told you, you know, Voltaire, 50 years after Voltaire, Voltaire leads to the revolution, you know. So, I mean, everybody concerned about power, they are aware about that. And so, I mean, I would do the same. I think I would try to control the information and culture. I mean, if I was in charge, I don't know. I mean, if I was afraid of losing my power, you know, it's logical, you know. I mean, like Michelangelo, he said, like to use a metaphor. I'll try. Like at that time, they had big debates among the cultural world, like we have now a little, you know, like Vasari, he organized a big debate about drawing and painting. You know, what is the best? Drawing, le dessin ou la peinture? You know, no. Sorry. Painting or sculpture. La peinture et la sculpture. You know, and they were asking to a lot of artists, like, okay, so of course some they say, yeah, painting is the best, sculpture is the best, and one of them, Pontormo, I think, which is an important character in my book, he said, no, drawing is the key of everything, you know, and because drawing is the foundation of both sculpture and drawing, and Michelangelo, his answer was, no, it's more profound than that. What's the most important is the idea, you know, like, you know, and there is that famous story about that he can watch a block of stone, of marble, and he sees, you know, I mean, like he sees the sculpture inside, you know, and so what's the most, of course, he's a magnificent worker, I mean, like, but what's the most important is the idea. And this is everything happening in the world. I mean, I'm talking about art now, but everything happening in the world starts with the idea, you know, the idea of, and so that's why, of course, I mean, culture is the start of everything, you know. So that's why it's the people in charge, those who have.
A publisher
is happening in 1557, which is a hard time because this is the return of Inquisition. The Pope at that time, you know, there were great Pope when Michelangelo was young, which allowed him and ordered him the Sixtine Chapel but at the time of the book, the Pope wanted to destroy the Sixtine Chapel, you know. So it was like the return of Inquisition. And at the time, the Duke of Florence, he was not like that at all, you know. He was a really friend of art, and sorry,
it's okay.
And yeah, and because he understood, like, being a friend of beauty would make him having a legacy, you know. And he didn't care, like, all those bunch of painters, they were homosexual or they were just, he didn't care about believing in God or not, you know. He just wanted to make his city more beautiful, you know. And a guy like Bolloré is not like that. I mean, a guy as Bolloré is the most dangerous person in the world, I think. One of the most dangerous person in the world, you know. He's a billionaire. It means he's got the power. And he's a fanatic, you know. I mean, he's got an agenda, and that, I think, when you believe too much in God and you've got the power, it makes you a very, very dangerous person. And so, like, saying that, you could believe I'm talking about the 16th century, but what was surprising to me, you know, when I wrote the book, as usual, you know, I mean, when I write, I always write about history, you know, and when I write quand j'écris mes livres, when I write my novels, I never thought about the present time. But at the end, you always can make connections, you know, always, you know. But so this happened that, okay, I wrote my story and I discovered that Pope, Paul IV, Paul IV, and the return of Inquisition. I didn't think about the present time, but then, I mean, the present caught me up, you know, like I had to make some connections, like, okay, and that's why at the very end of the book, you know, at the beginning of the book, I like to, I mean, as many writers, like to write some quotes, you know, like many people, they do it. And I found that sentence in a letter from Michelangelo to his father. These are hard times for art, you know. And I added that sentence very late for some reason, you know. But I thought, yeah, I mean, like it might have been true at the time Michelangelo wrote that sentence, but for now, the present time, it's not that hard for us, you know. But couple of years after, it is hard times again for arts, you know, like, you know, I mean, I had like, we felt like we can write anything, we can, and okay, it's not now it's not the Soviet Union during the 60s, but we were like, I mean, I had my French publishing house for 15 years, you know, and Bolloré grabbed it.
And took it.
And he decided that now we will publish mostly far-right people, even not writer, you know, I mean, far-right people like politics, and he doesn't care much about art anyway.
No. It's really worrying, but it's also really sad.
Yeah, je suis pas dans sa tête. I'm not I don't know what he thinks about, you know, but yeah, I think, like, I mean, I was glad, you know, basically I'm a kind of leftist, you know, but I was happy that in my publishing house, everybody, there were other writers that are very, very, not from my side, you know, but I think this is a good thing, you know, like that everybody can. I mean, this is, I'm ashamed to have to say it, you know, like, this is the basics of the democracy, you know, like everybody can publish, can write whatever they want, you know, but now we are going in something narrow, you know, like in the same direction. And it's, yeah, you're right, it's sad and it's worrying, and it's not good even for, I mean, for because the people like Bolloré, you know, they are obsessed by civilization, you know, our civilization, but this is not good for civilization, for our civilization, even in his point of view, you know, like the European Judeo-Chrétienne civilization, like this is the wrong direction, you know, like, I mean, a part of, because it's all about, for 20 years, it's all about identity, you know, identity. But the part of our European identity is especially that kind of le pluralism, you know, like the Amsterdam is a good example of our identity. I mean, you know, Amsterdam is really representative of Europe, you know, like when in France it was the absolute monarchy, you know, like there was no free speech at all, you know. People, where they used to go to Holland, you know, to publish Descartes and Voltaire and everybody, you know. Like, so it was, I mean, le pluralisme is a part of, I mean, the free speech, and this is a part of the European identity. So even from his point of view, Bolloré is making a mistake, I think.
Maybe one last question before we go to a fragment that is about this. What surprised me of the Bolloré, of course, I'm not that invested in French publishing houses, but reading upon it, it surprised me how fast it went, how little time it took before the complete institution of a publisher that's been there so long was dismantled. Did you see it coming?
Yeah, well, actually we did. Actually we did, because he did the same with another publishing house before, you know, but there was no reaction at that time. So we knew, like, it was like so far so good, you know, like he bought Grasset, and then we knew that we were protected by the boss of Grasset, which he was the guardian, you know, of the spirit of the publishing house. And we knew that it wouldn't last forever, because we knew how Bolloré was used to manage his companies, you know. But we believe that maybe he would just to preserve some surface, you know, like he would spare this publishing house, you know. And at some point, just everything broke. And what was good is that it didn't happen that fast, but all of a sudden he fired Olivier Nora. We expected it, but we were in that state of mind, like, so far so good, you know. But what was interesting is once he fired him, then the reaction was fast too, you know, like in 24 hours, like 200 writers, they decided to leave, to quit Grasset, and to say, okay, so now this is the things are going too bad, so we leave Grasset and we won't publish there anymore, you know. So this is, yeah, I mean, this is a kind of war, you know. I mean, it's a big word, of course, but at least it's a fight, you know, like it's a fight. And now what was interesting is there was a response, you know, like we struck back. In 24 hours. We decided that enough is enough, you know. He can't do that anytime to magazines, to networks, to broadcast, you know, to television channels, publishing houses. So this one was La Goutte d'eau, you know, the drop, La Goutte d'eau, you know,
spilled over the bucket.
So here we are. I don't know what will happen, but yeah, I mean, this is a kind of hard times, you know, for culture.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to read something that is, well, very accurate in this sense. Maybe briefly, it's letters written by Michelangelo Buonarroti and Angelo Bronzino, and I don't think it needs much introduction.
Florence, 25 januari 1557. Laat die Spanjaarden toch de pest krijgen. De hertogin wil dat ik de fresco's naar haar smaak overschilder. Maar ze koopt me niet voor een paar florijnen. Ik zal het werk van mijn meester zo eerlijk mogelijk en zoals hij het heeft gewild afmaken binnen de mogelijkheden van mijn geringe talent, zoals God het mij heeft gegeven. Ik beloof het u plechtig, u en de nagedachtenis van onze diep betreurde vriend. O tempora, o mores, ze hebben de mond vol van Cicero, maar wij kunnen dat net zo goed op hun bordje leggen. Die mensen denken dat ze pal staan voor de deugd en ze zien niet in dat deugd zonder boodschap van het evangelie niets anders is dan misleiding en ontaarding van de ziel.
Michelangelo Buonarroti aan Agnolo Bronzino, Rome, 27 januari 1557. Ik kan u niet zeggen, messer Agnolo, wat een opluchting uw eed voor mij is. En toch is mijn ziel allesbehalve rustig sinds de dood van onze arme vriend. Zonder dat ik ze gezien heb, ben ik er zeker van dat de fresco's van Pontormo tegen elke prijs moeten worden gered. Want ze staan voor een idee van kunst en van het goddelijke, waarvan ik weet dat we dat delen. De idee, beste Bronzino, U en ik weten dat er niets hogers bestaat. Daarom twijfel ik er niet aan dat u beter dan wie dan ook en even goed als ik trouw kunt zijn aan de idee van uw meester door zijn werk in zijn geest af te maken. Door dat te doen neemt u deel aan het gevecht dat wij tegen pikzwarte machten leveren en u stelt zich bloot aan vreselijke gevaren, want onze vijanden klimmen als spinnen tegen de wand naar ons toe. In Rome vrees ik elke dag voor mijn Sixtijnse kapel. En ik begin me af te vragen of ik er niet goed aan doe de arme Volterra mijn naakte maar te laten sluieren, als het minste van twee kwaden, om niet het risico te lopen dat het geheel wordt vernietigd. In wezen begin ik te verlangen naar mijn eigen dood, om niet te hoeven zien wat er met mijn werk gebeurt, want ik twijfel er eigenlijk niet meer aan dat het me niet lang zal overleven. Overigens voel ik het einde naderen, want ik ben gevloerd door vermoeidheid en ik weet niet hoe ik er nog in slaag mijn pijnen de baas te worden en me elke dag naar het werk aan de Sint-Pieter te slepen. Als ik de overtuiging niet had dat ik in mijn werk God verheerlijk en dat ik mijn neef Leonardo niet in de steek wilde laten en evenmin het gezin van wijlen mijn leef Urbino dat ik onderhoud, dan denk ik dat ik me in mijn bed al aan de dood zou uitleveren. Het zijn wrede tijden, vriend, voor de verdedigers van kunst en schoonheid.
Dank jullie wel. Yes, this is it. But when you were writing this, and one of the things you've also said in interviews about this, and that's maybe another part of what you're describing in the way that art is under pressure, is that it's not only threatened from the right, but it has also, you've also had a real disappointment with the progressive left, because they've also not let art have the freedom that it deserves to have. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, this... I wrote the book when... before I heard about some books were rewritten, like Agatha Christie, James Bond, Roald Dahl, you know, and so it's because it was not politically correct, or I don't know, and I think so that came from the left, you know. And I think it was as crazy. I mean, it was even worse maybe than the from the right. They just want to forbid books from the libraries, you know, like, okay, in Florida, they just decided that Shakespeare is banned. Mm-hmm. Everything is banned for some reason, you know. But this is even more, I mean, it's more tricky. Like, no, they won't forbid it, but they will rewrite some sentence they don't like for some reason, you know. And I think this is even more dangerous because it's really like, I mean, it's Orwell, you know, like it's you reshape, you touch to the art of the writers, but you touch to something even maybe more important, history, you know, like if you try to change the past, you know, I mean, maybe Agatha Christie was, very, very conservative and a bit racist, and okay, maybe, but I mean, she was like that, you know, so you just don't have to erase the fact that she was like that, you know. And so, I mean, touching to history, for me, it's the ultimate crime, you know, like there is, because this is the background, this is the foundation of everything. I mean, what you think, you may not realize it, but what you think is made by what you know about the past, you know, the what happened in the past, and when this is the most of what you think of today, you know, you think it about based on the experience of the past, you know, like, and so if you make the past confused, you know, if you introduce some confusion in the past, then I mean there is no foundation to think properly, you know. So I think it's a problem, you know. I think it's a very, very big problem because, like, maybe it's yeah. I mean, the title of the title of that meeting we have now is between history and imagination. I think both are very important, but it may be surprising for a novelist, but what I always hated is when you make the confusion between history and imagination. You know, like I wrote a novel that imagine that Incas invading Europe, you know. But it's very important for me. I mean, it's like this book, you know. It's like a game of imagination, but it's very important for me that you understand that it's a fiction, it's not real, you know. And when you start to make confusion between history and imagination, I think it's very dangerous because everything is a mess, everything is confusing, and you can't think clearly if there is no border between history and imagination and real and imagination. So that's it.
I think this is a good time to ask Joost de Vries to join us. I will introduce you, Joost. He's the editor of the Volkskrant Sunday Supplement, and he's also one of the regular contributors to the literary podcast Boek FM, and the author of acclaimed novels Clausewitz, The Republic, Old Masters, it's all translated in English, Calm Down Tiger. And in 2023, he was awarded the Frans Kellendonk Prize for his entire body of work. And his latest novel, Hogere Machten, Higher Powers, a beautiful book, I think, was nominated for the Libris Literatuurprijs. I'm just going to say that in Dutch. Welkom, Joost. Dank, fijn dat je er bent. Yes, you also write a lot, I think, about, well, this book plays in the 1930s.
Yeah, 30s and 40s and 50s.
Yes.
Right.
And listening to what Laurent just said about history and how you cannot change it, even if you write a fiction, how did you deal with this?
Well, it's an interesting question, I think, and I think to continue on what Laurent was talking about, I think it's such a weird time we are living in, that so many persons on the political side of this world are trying to rewrite history. And you know, when you're in a relationship and something happens and you tell someone, no, it didn't happen, you're imagining, you call it gaslighting, right? It's a horrible thing to do. And I think that's very much going on with a lot of political parties, where it's, you know, Geert Wilders' party in the Netherlands, or it's Vladimir Putin, who was this whole, 2 years ago, wrote this 5,000-word essay about, his idea of Russian history, and it was pretty much all made up. So history more and more, just as the way culture is becoming more and more a playing field, I think, between all kinds of political forces. So whenever I'm writing something, I feel like you have a certain sense of moral obligation to deal with it, and I agree with Laurent, to make very explicit what is made up, and not just making explicit what is made up, but also not reframing it to fit your own picture. Just you have to have a sense of obligation towards the past. And I think in Laurent's book about Heydrich, which whenever I pronounce it, I was put in too many H's or too few. But I think it's one of the biggest themes where you're constantly, I think what for me, I love that book, that it's one of those things where whether it's you or the narrator is almost feeling guilty about telling this very exciting story from the past. So you almost feel like you have that's what I suppose what I'm talking about. You have this obligation. Like, are you using history as a novelist, to work out a certain theme? Are you using history because you're interested in a certain period? Or are you using history just because you want to tell a clever story and you want to entertain the audience? Or are you using history because you want to frame it and put it in some sort of perspective that suits your look on the world? I think you have to be at least conscious for yourself about it, why you're doing it.
I'm of course going to ask you, why did you do that? Why the 1930s?
Well, I think the 30s, and what I was interested in, and the book starts in the early 30s, or even before that. There's a scene earlier, and it ends in the early 60s. So it's a 30-year period. And what I was looking for was pretty much a bigger canvas. So I wanted to have to paint a portrait that was big, and I wanted to write about relationships that lasted for a very long time. And I wanted to write about the main characters, Elizabeth and Welmoed, this couple that meet and fall in and out of love with each other over a very long time. And every time they run into each other, 4, 5, or 10 years have passed. So they've become different people, and the way they look at each other is different. So I wanted to track those changes. But I think also when you look at that period from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s, like everything changes. And not just because of the Second World War, but it changed the way we looked at our relations in the West to the rest of the world. It changes the way, you know, especially in the 60s, when the way relationships worked, not just between lovers, but between children and parents. I think, you know, there's a very line where Elizabeth is very strict with her parents, and then you see her 30 years later on with her children. It's completely different. So I wanted to have that big canvas to show the changes, I suppose.
Do you recognize that longing for a big canvas?
Sorry?
Do you recognize that longing for a big canvas? Is it different?
Sorry, I didn't.
As a writer, do you think you were looking for like a big canvas to paint your story on?
The big picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what interested me in perspective is, you know, I mean, I wanted to write that detective novel, you know, but putting the intrigue, the murder in the painting society m'a permis, let me describing all the society, because the painters during the Renaissance, they were at the crossroad of every part of the society. You know, they were working for princes and kings, working with workers, helping them as assistants, with religious people because of the subject of the. So, yes, of course. I mean, as just a man loving history. In love with history, you know, I'm interested to understand the period dans tous ces aspects, in all
its aspects, yes, in all its colors, yeah.
Of course. And what's interesting, if I followed Joost, is 30 years is interesting, because 30 years is I don't know, 30 years is nothing, but if you watch it in 30 years, many things change, you know. And I think maybe maybe not in the Middle Age, but I'm not sure. I mean, 30 years is a huge gap, you know. It's a lifetime, but from the beginning to the end, it's completely different. And it was with the Renaissance. It was.
Yeah, also especially with the Renaissance. I mean, if you look at modern history starting from the Renaissance, it's very hard to find any country that over a period of 30 years, you know, if you look at the start of 30 years, and 30 years later, you probably had wars, you had all kinds of health scares, you had, you know, different cities crumbling and being full. You know, 30 years in your life seems like a short time, perhaps, looking back at the, you know, thousands of years of civilizations. But 30 years, like everything changes.
And you're right. I mean, 30 years is a good. Scale,
yeah,
bonne échelle, yeah. So 30 years is.
And I think, I don't know what's like for you, but I think change is such an interesting topic for a writer, because you always, you know, every book is about change. Everything is about something happening and something putting in a different perspective. So you're always, you know, looking for something to describe that changes, and that allows you to look at it from a different way.
And that's why I decided, for some reason a bit random, I decided that my book would be located in the middle of the 16th century. But I think it was interesting because it was the sunset of Renaissance, you know, like Renaissance, which is, I mean, the Renaissance, literally its meaning, you know, the rebirth, you know, but rebirth falling apart, you know. So, I mean, of course, for a novelist, for a writer, when things are moving, it's interesting, of course. I mean, when the change is interesting, of course.
Yeah.
You both wrote also about the Second World War, and it's very obvious, of course, that this is a topic you want, maybe as a writer, to delve into, and at the same time there's a lot written, of course, about the Second World War. So I was wondering, for you personally, what was something that you were searching when looking so intensely at that period of time?
Please.
Well, I think for me that was something very contemporary. I mean, this book, for a big part, plays during the Second World War. But I would have felt silly, I suppose, if I would have been, writing scenes about, people, soldiers storming the machine guns or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt silly, and I tried writing it, but I felt a bit silly writing about, cities being bombed, sitting behind my desk in Amsterdam, or at the same time cities are being bombed in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So the chapters in my book that are about the Second World War take place in the Dutch community in London.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty much safe, and they're looking at something that's happening at a distance, but not far distance. It happened in somewhere, places they know. And at the same time, they're living their lives. And I think there's a chapter where someone is, the main character is picking out a suit to wear because he has to go to a party that evening.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, he knows, Amsterdam is occupied and France is occupied and cities are being bombed. And this whole historical event is happening with people losing their lives, with destruction, with so much suffering. And at the same time, you're still living your life, mm-hmm. and you're still falling in love, and you're still going to birthday parties or whatever. And I think that's how I felt personally during these last couple of years, where, you're absolutely horrified by so much that's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, I write for a newspaper, and I feel like I'm very engaged with everything happening in the world, and you try to come up with things to write about. But at the same time, you can worry about Gaza all day,
mm-hmm.
and I do, and you worry about Ukraine all day, and I do. And at the same time, you have to pick up your kid from school or whatever.
Yeah.
So that those two things, the very big and the very small, and the very political and the very personal, that take up so much of the same space in your head, and still they're two completely different tracks. And I think how you, as a moral person, bring those two together and keep those two together in your mind is a topic that clearly happened during the Second World War, but it's happening every day, all the time.
Yeah.
So that was for me the trigger to write about it.
What was it for you? The question you had?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's. I don't know if it's for every writer the same, but you focus on something specific, some detail, and then even if you don't think about it, it extends to something larger, to something bigger, and just I was intrigued and fascinated by that story of some attempt or the assassination, the attempt of Heydrich in Prague in 1942, which is objectively it's a detail of the Second World War,
mm-hmm.
But if you dig, usually, any detail is so. The world is so. Everything is so linked that the detail you pull off the string of a detail, and then you enlarge, and at the end you've got a big picture, And this is what happened with that assassination of Heydrich, like two parachutists, two Czechoslovakian soldiers. They tried to kill one big Nazi. I mean, this was not such a detail, but it happened, and I didn't know when I started the book. It happened that Nazi was really one of the main architects of the Third Reich, you know, and following his career, retracing the career of that guy was retracing all the Third Reich history, you know. And so I guess this is, this is interesting that this is this is often what make writers, you know, like they focus on the detail, and then at the end you've got if you do it well, the reader has a world in front of his eyes from a detail. You know, there is a big universe at the end. You know, and so if you can do that, I think it's interesting. You know.
What I like, I think, in both of these books. Because these two men who plan the assassination, they're very brave. Even though they're scared, they're very brave. And I think, Joost, in your book, there's also very brave people, especially in the end. I won't spoil it. I always really like reading about that, because it sort of gives me a sense of bravery as well. And is that something you believe in, that you also need to tell and share these stories to give people a little... You know, do you think literary characters can lead you or can lead by example?
Well, I mean, as I told you, I don't feel as a teacher, but yeah, I mean...
but it's not teaching.
No, but I think this is something like the little boy inside me, you know, I mean, I love Bertolt Brecht, and I love that sentence, you know... malheur au peuple qui a besoin de héros, you know, the curse on people who need heroes, you know. So I love the sentence, but I have to say, I mean, as a former, as still a little boy, you know, I need heroes. I have to, and when I discovered the story of the Heydrich assassination, yes, I was very inspired by those ordinary, and this is what I like, you know, like those 2 or 3 parachutists. They were ordinary men, young men, doing something extraordinary, you know. And so I think it's kind of inspiring, you know. I mean, hopefully I won't have to do the same as what they did, but just, I mean, I like it. I like the story, even if it's a tragedy, it's a drama, and. But I think it gives me a bit of confidence or a bit of hope on human race, you know. Like I like the idea that people like that exist.
Yeah, I think it's obviously that human beings are capable of doing the most horrible things to each other, and people are able to sell each other out and be traitors and be horrible cowards. And at the same time, it's always the exact opposite going on as well. And I think in literature, there tends to be this very focus on people failing at stuff and people not standing up for what they believe. And I think for me, there's, insofar as the main character is a hero, he's more that, you know, for such a long time he's been on the sidelines, and he's just so happy to not be on the sidelines for one, even if it's a tricky perspective. So insofar he's a hero, he's also doing it for selfish reasons. He's not doing it just because he's such a moral, great person. He's also doing it like he feels like he needs to prove something to himself. So there's this element as well. And I think just a little while ago, I watched Le Chagrin, Le Pitié, the famous documentary by on French resistance.
Marcel Aufus.
Yeah. And it's like the best film I've ever seen in such a long time. It's like this 4-hour documentary about a town in provincial France. And it's about who collaborated and who went to the resistance. And it's completely random who did what. It's completely, people went into resistance because they went into a restaurant and they ordered.
I knew you talk about that scene, of course.
And they went to the restaurant and they ordered the steak, and then the Germans had already ordered the steak, and they were like, "That's our cows. Those are French cows." And then they went to the resistance. So it's like completely. Even though the guys who went, who we would consider to be heroes, sometimes go into that just by chance. And I think that's such an interesting topic for novelists.
Yeah, sure.
But it's also quite quite worrying, right? That it's very arbitrary then what side you were on.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point, right? Who said that? It's not, the question we need to ask ourselves is not how can we make sure we're not victims, but the question needs to be how can we make sure we're not the perpetrators.
Abel Herzberg, denk ik.
I think Abel Herzberg, yeah.
I see Bo nodding, so then we know. Maybe a last thing that I want to ask you before going to the audience, because, well, looking at this day and age and where we are now, and looking at history, and you writing about history, do you think that the knowledge of a certain time period, and especially maybe written in fiction, do you think we learn something from history at all?
Yes, I need to believe that. This is more something I want to believe than I necessarily do, because, we live in a time where there are so many parallels to be made to different time periods. And, every day we make them in the newspaper and we write columns and we write opinion pieces, and, it doesn't seem to stop those decisions being made. But I think we are, I do believe, just as Laurent described with the situation of Grasset, we do live in a time where certain forces are trying to, I wouldn't say necessarily silence, but make a certain kind of moral and intellectual discourse impossible. And I think, we have in France, we have the situation with Grasset. I was thinking about the US, where Jeff Bezos pretty much closed down the entire book section of the Washington Post. Yeah. And this was absolutely not an economical decision. It wasn't made out of his need to have a little bit more money. It was clearly like he doesn't want a certain level of cultural and intellectual and moral discourse around. He just doesn't want it to exist. And I think as novelists, you and as writers, you constantly need to be aware of this, and you need to make sure it's still around.
And looking at history helps you be aware of this.
Yeah.
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't be that optimistic. I think we don't learn, we don't, we forget, I don't know.
Well, have a nice evening, everyone.
No, there was in France. There was a book a couple of years ago. It was called 1938. And it was an essay saying like we are in 1938. And there was a debate. It's a bit of exaggeration. We are not in 1938. And since that time, a few years after, I think we are in 1939 now. Because, I don't know, Trump, threatening to invade Greenland, Canada, and attacking Iran. And it is not in 39, with the Austria. So I think we may know about history, but there is some. At some point, there is we miss some connection. The Second World War. We all know about Second World War, but it's not enough, to stop some kind of process which looks like we have it now under our eyes, you know, and still it's happening. So maybe, I mean, le pire n'est jamais certain. The worst is never sure, you know. But day after day, I mean, like just every day, you know, like in the morning, you check, you say, really? I mean, Trump said that, he did that, and Trump and Putin and everything. I mean, like I mean, we can't believe what we hear, what we see, but we can't stop it, you know. And there are some forces going, and so like the idea that, you know, after the Second World War, Hannah Arendt and so on, they said, yeah, I mean, cultures should have preserved us to what happened, you know, but culture, I mean, didn't preserve us to anything, you know, and Germans, they were the most
cultured person.
That was the country of culture, of philosophers and so on, you know. So I don't know. I'm not very optimistic. Sorry.
No, I think culture, in its sense, will not save us just by being culture. It needs to be embedded in so much more than that. And I'm always, I do believe there's lessons to be learned from history, but I think one needs to be careful with making those lessons too literal, too one-on-one. I mean, I remember when we first had a discussion about whether some very right-wing parties in the Netherlands were fascist or not, and everyone started saying, well, they're not fascist because, you know, they're not wearing uniforms. So everyone was so, you know, absolutely focused on that it needs to be an exact copy of something that happened before, that I think we didn't pay attention too much to what it was in its own time. So I think that there's a lot to be learned from history and certain sentiments to be recognized. But history is not something that ever repeats itself so literally.
Of course, but I'm very good in that game, because if you want parallel, I will find some.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. I mean, I love it. Yeah.
Like I know it's not exactly relevant, but I like the game, and so I will show you how good I am. Like the Reichstag, fire Reichstag. Capitol, you know, I mean, like the attack of the Capitol, you know, I mean, the parallels I can find you of any event, I will find you some, which is not exactly relevant, you know, but you're right. I mean, it's just like the purpose is not like to say it's exactly the same, but just to see it as a warning, you know, like, okay, I mean, there is something a bit similar, you know, so take care.
And to come back to what we were talking about earlier, I think you need to recognize that things are always changing, that you not ever need to think like the way it is today, that's how it's going to be forever. You need to always be aware, and I think that history can help teachers, is that things are always in motion and things are always changing, and what is very popular today might not be so 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. I think that's what I would call an historical awareness.
And that is needed. Maybe one last thing about this comparison before I do really come to you, and that is that what you write about in the HHhH, about what happened in Sudetenland, people have very often compared that to the annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, of course. I thought about it too. I mean, like this is very similar. You know, like the Russian. I mean, Putin did exactly what Hitler did with Czechoslovakia. Mm-hmm. I mean, he said, okay, that part of the country, there are Russians over there, so it's mine, you know. And this is what Hitler did with Czechoslovakia. So of course this is a kind of parallel with.
You always find.
Yeah, I had to think about it, you know, like this is something very similar, you know, and so this. Comparaison n'est pas raison and everything, you know, but this is a kind of pattern, you know. You have to take, and this is what history can help, you know. Like, yeah, this case reminds me Czechoslovakia in '38. Yeah, I mean, a guy pointing a place. Okay, there are Russians, so this is mine. So I invade.
Yeah. So be aware of the parallels, whether it's Jeff Bezos completely destroying the Washington Post or an annexation of another country. I'm coming towards you. If you want to ask a question, please do. Can I have some lights? Yes, I'm going over there.
You both made a very strong case for history. Thanks for that. But what about the future? And as novelists, do you see alternatives for the dystopian novel? Or is it inevitably a dystopian novel if you write about the future?
You mean... Basically, you mean if you write a sci-fi novel, does it have to be horrible or something? Yeah. No, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I know it's a tricky one. Coming up with one that, if it's not dystopian, it's utopian. And you know, it's I suppose I do find it difficult to, if you would write a very upbeat and we're all wearing pastel colors and everyone's fine and we're enjoying the weather, and people would see it as perhaps horribly naive. And I think as novelists, you tend to go to the things you worry about, and you tend to go through things you feel like are changing in a direction that you can't foresee entirely, and everything you can't foresee tends to be a bit scary, right? So I suppose a lot of writers would sooner go for the dystopian one than the utopian.
Yeah, in a way, for technical reason. I mean, it would be more interesting. It will be more interesting if it's dystopian.
But also, I think as a novelist, you need conflict.
Yeah,
and it's difficult if there's no conflict.
You know, I mean, there is that in France we say les gens heureux n'ont pas d'histoire. Happy people, they don't have story. You know, there is no story if everybody is happy. So it has to be dystopian, but not for politics, for political reason, just for technical reason. And as novelists, things have to go wrong.
I'm coming towards you. Sorry, ik moet even. Mag ik er langs? Ja, dank u wel.
It's a bit of a conceptual question, but I was intrigued by what Joost said about having a moral obligation towards history. Because where does that put the writer versus the autocrat? Because the autocrat also believes that he is fulfilling.
I think the main difference is, it's like with, it's a bit like religion, you know. I mean, like it's like the ethic of the writer. I think not every writer believes the same, but my moral obligation is to show the what is made up and what is not. Because I don't want you to believe something is true if it's not true, or if I don't believe it's true, you know. I don't want to make it, but unlike the religion, or unlike official history from Putin, or I don't know, you know, like I just. If I write a novel, I just want to, comment on dit, une proposition, you know, to give you hypotheses, you know, hypotheses, But I don't want to convince you of everything, you know. And I certainly don't want to make you believe that something happened if I know it didn't happen. So that's a big difference. And I think the autocrat, they want to erase some part of the, you know, they want to build some official history, which is obviously not the fact. Okay, try to answer, because my answer is not.
No, but to give a very clear example, I think a famous example from a decade ago or something, where Geert Wilders released his political program, and he said somewhere that Hitler was a National Socialist, and he put national between parentheses. Clear as what he was saying is Hitler was a socialist. So he put away the national part, which is clearly right wing, and he tried to portray Hitler as left wing. So when you bring your eraser to history and you take away the things that don't suit you, and you try to frame a story or in this case outright lie about a historical event or historical person, then I feel you're being immoral towards history. You're using it clearly for your contemporary personal gains. You're using it for your agenda. That's what I would say the autocrat would do. And so when I speak as a novelist, when I say you have a certain kind of moral obligation, is to not do that, and to make constantly sure that even though, you know, Laurent does it and I do it, you know, you pick out the parts of history you want to use, and you look at the locations you want to use, because you can't fit the entire 20th century in a single novel. So of course you choose what there is, but you're not pretending like this is the only story to be told. You're not pretending like this is the full truth. And I think also, obviously, one of the big, I think perhaps Laurent was going for that as well, that as a novelist, you're constantly, the whole game you're playing as a novelist and as a reader is that you know that the book you're holding is fiction. I'm not pretending.
About perspectives, and like I just heard that you don't have the feeling, we can all see that we don't learn lessons from history. I was thinking about the book Thinking Fast and Slow, because you also said it's about emotions, of Daniel Kahneman. So would it be an idea to gather all kinds of other scientists together with historians to see what can we learn from other disciplines like psychologists, psychiatrists, Daniel Kahneman with his lessons, because we need more perspectives to see how we can build a better future. Because I do think in times of pessimistic times, we need to be optimistic. What can we tell otherwise our children? How do you think about that?
I'm not sure I got everything. Can you try to rephrase?
Yeah. So do you think we need other disciplines to see if we can combine knowledge to look for how we can learn from our history?
Other disciplines, like, you mean?
Psychologists, Daniel Kahneman with Thinking Fast and Slow, how emotions are really a trigger for human beings to just don't think, just we're triggered by hate, by fear, more than we learn from lessons.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I studied history in Utrecht a long time ago, and I think ever since you see that, especially when it comes to history, there's so many more perspectives coming in. And clearly, whether it's these days, we have much bigger focus on, for example, the colonial interpretation of history. And we have much more, compared to 20, 30 years ago, we have much more interest in how global history is. And I think we're more and more being interested in how history is differently perceived by men and women, and the power differences between those, and how it absolutely, you know, we can have an image of what it was like to live in 1950 or 1960, and more we're being aware that there are many more perspectives than just like an average, which tend to be a male one. So it's clear that we're gaining a lot of extra knowledge, I think, from all those different perspectives, having more money to go around and having a bigger house and making sure we could all go on holidays more often. And I think these days we're having the whole discussion that perhaps happiness is something different than, just buying stuff and traveling the world. That happiness can perhaps be something that has more to do than just consuming yourself, but giving something to your children and giving them a livable world in a livable planet. So I think you're very right that we are, I think, more and more trying to come up with all these different perspectives of what is happiness, for example, and try to project them on the future. Like, what do we really want to have? I think we're having, I'm sorry if I'm ranting now, but I think, for example, there's so much about how people view their career. I think in the past 10 years is so completely different than 10 years ago. The 10 years ago, it was always about getting the better job. And now more and more people are being outspoken that, having a great career perhaps means earning a little bit less money, but having more time with your family, for example. So I think that question that Kahneman puts forth is what is happiness is something that's such an interesting question to ask in history and in politics and in your personal life. So yeah, it's a very good one.
Well, okay, just to...
Sorry.
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure I will answer your question. But the Balzac, les romans balzaciens, the Balzac novels, before sociology, Balzac could teach us a lot about how is working the society, and then appeared the sociology as a science, discipline, and so for me now, like after Pierre Bourdieu, it's not very relevant to write a novel like in the Balzac style, in the Balzac way, and so, and after sociology, there will be always something else, and in a way, I mean, Bourdieu, with his concept like le capital culturel, capital symbolique, etc., was more creative than many novels which are still published today, but I think they are useless. That way to describe the society now is old-fashioned, and you have to invent not only, I mean, like. This kind of novel, it's useless now because you have to find your creativity somewhere else,
Thank you both very much for this, maybe not the most optimistic, but nevertheless really urgent conversation. Your books did really give me also some hope and some examples of bravery that I appreciate very much. So thank you also for that. Bo Tareskin and Jolanda van den Berg, thanks for reading. And Institut Français NL, thank you for the collaboration. Have a drink. I think it was very warm in the hall. So I think we all deserve that. And thank you again so much for being here. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Jan.